Okay, welcome, Rabbi Chirik. Let's continue.
Yes. So it's we're going to continue. We went from the top of creation all the way down the chains of creation all the way down to the bottom, and now we connect the bottom chain all the way to the top, as if there's a direct connection between every aspect at the bottom of the chain directly to the very beginning of the creation. And what do we do afterwards? That's what we're up to. What do we do next in Hasidic reflection? And I think this is really unique. This is maybe it's one of the first times this is being taught in the public. So yeah, let's continue. Can we bring up the text? Yeah. V'achrei kol zeh, after all of doing this, so we went from the bottom of creation down the chains, the details, connected the bottom chain all the way back to the top, and every aspect of the bottom chain, all the way back to the top. V'achrei kol zeh, after all of this, a person should use insight. Yaskel refers to the right brain. Use insight in his left brain, in his reflection in his left brain. B'mi bara ela, and who created these? In other words, the verse says, Sumarim enechem, lift up your eyes, and it refers to physical eyes. And then think about the next, the verse continues, B'mi bara ela, who created these? Begashmias, the physical creation. Nivdal gamaprata yesa achrein, how it's not separated, even the part which is the very last part of creation, the most physical part of creation, b'mokar akloli, in the holistic original source. It's not separated. There's no separation. Hayosa rishon, with the holistic most original source. Gam b'chol prat, and also every part, sheb'chol davar v'davar, in every single thing. Kamai, for example, bebrias shamayim ha'aretz, in the creation of the heaven or earth, or kol prate chelke, or any parts of the specific parts of daimem. This is an acronym. Daimem tzemeach chai medaber, of inanimate, tzemeach, things that grow, plants, chai, animals that move, that are alive and move, and medaber, and people, in the study of people. How each of these, their source is in the spiritual aspect of the expression of Asiya, of God's action. And ad rumamailis, you go up every higher and higher, like we did at the beginning of the last lesson. We took a piece of we took actually milk to the grass, to the cow, to the sun, to the galgal, to the efanim, to the srafim, no, to the highest, to the srafim, and then to God speaking in Asiya. That's malchus d'Asiya. God speaking, the expression of Asiya, the God speaking in action. Adruma mailis, and you can continue going from there. God's action connects to God speaking, which connects to God thinking, which then, and you can continue going deeper and deeper. Ochus v'koshu kashal sheles, and all these things are connected, are holding. Ochus means that being grasped and tied together like a chain. V'kamesha kosovo, like it's written, Bereshis, like we learned already before. What does it mean in the beginning God created? The first word of the written Torah. Bereshis, bara, and God created in the beginning. It's either translated Bekadmin, which Kadmin refers to that comes before, which means the crown. God, desire, with desire God created the world, or Bechuchmasa, or with insight. Chuchmasa is insight in Aramaic. In Hebrew, you say Chachma. In Aramaic, you add an aleph at the end, you go Chachmasa, right? Like in In Arabic, you would say dog is kalb. In Hebrew, it's kelev, and in Aramaic, it's kalba. Okay, just slight variations. Chulu. Harabichinas kesef v'chachma. Now the level of crown, v'chachma. The crown means drive. V'chachma means insight, wisdom. Sheba Abiyah, in the four worlds of Atzilus, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya, four worlds of God, creating like a personality that we can relate to, not creating, but expressing, setting up a personality that we can create to. Bria is the world of creation where it's God's thought. Yetzirah is God's speech, and Asiya is God's action. And Miyuchadim, they're all one. Just like all these parts, Kachol Pratechem, every single part, Hamistafim mehem, that comes out of the 10 spheres, Bamides, whether it's emotions, or Machshava Divra Maaseh, Shebachol Olam, and the thought, speech, and action in each world. In other words, each world has its own mini thought, speech, and action of God. Shu Klolos Esas, and basically the intellect, emotion, and thought, speech, and action, because thought, speech, and action is also Malchus, it's the expression. And these are generally the 10 spheres, the Chol Elam, in every single world. And usually the intellectual part of the first 3 of the 10 spheres is expressed only in thought. And the next 3, which is emotion, feelings, is expressed in tone of voice, which is speech. And action is the last 3 of the 10 spheres, is expressed in action. The Chol Elam, and that's in every single world. Shehu. And what are the worlds? Atik Yemim, which is the attic of the Atik Yemim, is like the attic, the disconnected days. In other words, when you have a cup, you have the water, and you have the cup that contains what you want. So Atik Yemim is what you really want. Varachanpin, long faces, is what the physical thing, that's the vessel, and the dream vessel, that's like big faces. Va'aba ve'ema, and mother and father, which are consultants, but they're also creators. They're not something separate. They're creators of the Zun. Zun is small faces, which is Zoh, small faces, practical dream. And Nukva is the reflection where it gets basically captured with, which is Malchus. Nukva means a whole, which is also Malchus, which is also expression, which also is thought, speech, and action, which captures the intellect, emotions, and desire to act. The Abiyah of the 4 worlds. So basically, if you're getting lost, there's no reason to, because basically everything just repeats itself again and again in a more specific way. That's what he's saying, that whatever exists in the holistic exists again in the parts, just repeats itself again and again. Ad bechinas asiya, until we come lower to the action, the malchus asiya, of the expression of the world of asiya. Notes seifan bitchilas, and here's the point: the end is wedged in the beginning. Hakel, the tchilas hakel, the beginning of everything. The kamei shebekadmin hitzil, just like with God's crown, He created. With His desire, He hitzil, He formulated, He established His personality of 10 spheres. Kach bekadmin zeh atme bara, so too with that same desire, He created. Created basically means the conception of the world, which basically God's thought is the souls. We are human. The human soul is a thought of God. The Yatzar, and then He formed everything. That's the planning. That's the God speaking. The Asa, and then God implemented. Asa means to do Kameshu Kosov, like it's written. We've been repeating this verse all along. Kol Asher Chafetz, whatever God desires, Asa, that's what He does all the way down. Kach b'mides, the same thing with emotions. Everything's connected. heard about this before. It says, behold, places, and it was with me. Because place is inside God. Just like you can imagine a spacious space, like a nice room, your bedroom, or a beautiful hall with a nice staircase, right? You can imagine that inside your mind. So too, the space is inside God. And they're actually dependent. The six directions are actually dependent and nullified to the six emotions, which are nullified to God. Lacha Hashem Agdula, in prayer we say, to you is greatness, which refers to Hashem's great kindness, which usually in space refers to going right. B'chol Eilam, and strictness refers to going left. B'chol Eilam, in every world, L'fi Mashahu, this exists, space exists in every world according to it, what it is. Shebechinas Shehu ad bechinas mokem atzmi shehu mekeme, and space basically evolves and goes up from being physical space to being emotion until until we go so deep that the God is the space of the world. K'mayim Razal, like the Razal say, hu mekeme shalaylam, like the rabbis explain that he is the place of the world. Ve'ena olam mekeme, but the world is not his place. He is the place of the world. And there's also a known saying of the rabbis, it's Arabic, he grabs, holds, has a hold of all the worlds, but nobody grabs onto him. Even thought and desire, and the most original desire, does not capture God. They are inside God. And from all of this it's understood. Now we understand that we can unite and connect the parts to the holistic, and we're going to use a path of thinking holistically. In other words, looking at the biggest picture possible, looking at the biggest picture possible of all of creation. Until from the essence of the unlimited light, how it goes down in the four worlds. Milvad, and besides, also there's another way of thinking, seeing the oneness in every specific world. When we take the path of parts, in the 10 spheres in each world. And even though a person knows all the explanation of the chain system of creation of all the Abiyah, of all the four worlds, Beprat, with all the parts, even though you know every world and you know the parts of every world, Yumshech nafshe liyichud aprat el yichud bechlal. So draw your soul from the oneness of the part to the oneness, or to the oneness of the part, and then move it to the oneness of the holistic. Go to the bigger picture. Ad atmos erin seif, then connect your mind to the essence of the unlimited light, mamish itself. Al derech hanal, like we've explained. So then we connect every single part of this physical world directly with the essence of God. B'kahai gavna, and do these types of ways of thinking. Milvad hayichud v'abitul kol olam beprat l'gabe atzmos. Besides, specifically taking a specific world and recognizing how that specific world is one and dependent specifically directly to the essence of God. And then Ad sheyove, and after you've been doing these mental exercises, Ad sheyove lekoles beinu shemarchav veplat, what's going to happen is it will come to you all the details that you've been widening in all the parts in your mind, widening in your mind regarding all the parts, and connecting them to the most holistic and the original source of everything. The Inyan Zen, and in this, you become proficient in this thing until you can do a kitzer muflag, a super summary. Kitzer means to make short, muflag tremendously short. You make a super summary, and the super summary is going to be less than a one-liner. For example, Malchuscha, Malchus Kol Elamim. The words that we say in the prayers, everyday prayers, 3 times a day, Malchuscha, Malchus Kol Elamim. That's 4 words. Your kingship, it's from King David's Psalms. It's Psalm 145, right? Your kingship, your rulership, your leadership is, and also your expression is Malchus Kol Elamim, is the expression of every single world. So now let's decode this. Let's give it a little more detail. When we say your kingship, means your expression of the unlimited light, of the unlimited, of the infinite, comes down, but Malchus, the Asiya, all the way down to the expression of the world of Asiya, which that is what is basically the invisible hand that moves everything. Canal. That's what it means. Your kingship is a kingship of every world. In other words, he's the invisible hand, like we've learned about. And we've learned the idea of Baratzen v'chachma midis, that when a person desires, it doesn't matter if they desire something really spiritual or they desire something extremely physical, it's always them. It's their desire. It's the same. B'chachma, and the wisdom, doesn't matter if a person is learning some very high concept, or being something really practical and pumping his bicycle tires and using wisdom to do so. It's the same thing. Umidas and emotions. Doesn't matter what we're using our emotions for. When it comes, we have to recognize that the emotions in space, it's directly connected with the essence of God. Like it is written, Ru'u ki ani anihu. See, in other words, it's an instruction. See that I am Him, mamish, in actual fact. V'chein ani havai leshanisi. And also, there's another saying, I am God and I have not changed through creation. Ani hu, and when we say the word ani, what are we referring to? There's 2 ways in Hebrew to refer to myself. Anechi, which is like referring to a person very deeply, and there's ani. Ani also means I. So when we say ani havai leshanisi, I ubichinas malchus, it's referring to God as He's expressing Himself. Shubichinas ein de keser, which is really the intangible, abstract power of Hashem's keseh, His crown, that means His desire, His drive. Denotes tchilasan b'seifan, the beginning is waged in the end. B'chol olam, in every world, b'prat, in all its parts, V'chein derech chlolos hakel, and also when we take the path of looking everything very holistically, v'lezeh amar ani havai leshanisi, and this is the meaning of I am God, I have not changed. Bein malchus therein safe, the malchus dasiya. It's the same expression, whether it's expression of God's infinite, or the expression of God's ability to implement. Well, there's no change. Zeu shekosov, and this is the meaning of what we were saying, that there's a super summary. Malchuscha hu malchus chalalamim. His essential leadership, kingship expression is the expression and leadership and the drive b'chol ha'olamim of every single world. Ad malchus dasiya, until the level which we start being able to see with our physical eyes, which is the expression of malchus dasiya, the expression of the world of Asiya, because we see the orbits, we see the stars move, we see the sunrise and sunset, we see moon rise and moon set. That is directly coming from Malchus the Malchus the Asiya. Itam kol anal v'dal. And you can understand these super summaries from everything that we said till now, v'dal, and it's actually, and it's enough. And it's enough for us to understand everything that has been explained. It's enough for us to be able to understand. So, like I've said before, the way it works in prayer, so we do reflection in all the parts, then we go down the chain all the way down, then we connect the lowest level with the highest level, and then we connect every part of the physical world with the essence of God. And then in prayer, when we say the super summary, which is corresponding to what we've been thinking about, we quickly reflect and revisit what we've been thinking about in length and all its details. We rapidly revisit it, and if we're lucky, we're going to get some insight, some new insight at that moment, right before or as we say those words, those 4 words, whatever it is. And it's going to give us a lot of work. Once we have the insight, then we're going to have to use our minds to application. How can we capture this inspiration that I just received? How could it be captured in something practical that it doesn't run away from me? It could become there could be a lot of energy that a person gets, and that is why people take on like chumras. When there's a certain commandment to be fulfilled, you can fulfill it on the most basic level, and then you can fulfill it in a more beautiful way and with more details. And it's going to be to a person that hasn't been experiencing all this energy, so it may be like a burden. It's like too much for them. But for a person that is experiencing tremendous amounts of energy, it's very important for them to do those little extra things in the physical world, because that's going to be a place where they can direct all this energy that they got from this reflection that they just did. So I'm gonna leave early today, and we'll continue on Bezras Hashem from the next chapter next week. And what we've just done is we finished learning how to think about Memala Kalamim, how God fills all the worlds. And this activity really reveals the divinity which we have inside our body, that there's light, that doing this brings light to our divine energy inside us. And then, of course, after we experience the light, we experience insight, we experience a new understanding, it's important to immediately apply that into something physical, do acts of goodness and kindness, being meticulous in the fulfillment of the commandments and the laws, and this is a process which people are naturally anyway going towards in the future, and it's going to become more and more popular. There was something, I saw a comment, but I wasn't able to read it before it.
Yeah, I'll read it. It says, "Will you again briefly give a synopsis of the prayer process?" Question mark.
So the prayer process is, in the beginning of when we started all these chapters, when already chapter 8, we learned how to use the brain. We learned there's our left brain, which is a detailed thinking brain. We learned that there's a right brain. And then we also learned that there's levels in the left brain. There's 3 levels. There's surface learning, and then there's being able to explain something to a child, and then there's being able to contrast and compare various details till we understand the main point behind it. And then we also, once we understand the main point, we learned about the 3rd brain, which is which is the back of our head, but it's also has aspects of it right behind our forehead, which is our brain of focus. So when we focus on the point, on the point that we've uncovered through detailed comparison of various details, that gives us a certain insight. And then there's this ability that we have also in the left brain, but we want to use a lot of effort, because that really awakens the deepest aspect of our left brain, and that has a direct connection to the right brain. And then once we have the flash of insight, new understanding, we're able to, then we need to go back to the left brain and think, well, how can we, Tavuna, how can we apply this? What can we do practically different? And then we explained that there's certain emotional preparations that we need. We need to think in detail in order for it to make emotional impact. And then we learned that we have to realize anything that we can understand concretely, there's always an aspect which is abstract, which we can't understand, but that is the energy behind, that is the reality and energy behind anything that we do understand. So we always have to recognize there's something higher than whatever we do understand, and that's really what that's really where we're trying to connect to, even though we can't with the limits of our mind, but we're going to by just recognizing that there's something higher. And then we learned that when we contrast with our mind and we realize that there's something missing, that maybe our brain is not the physical network of the neurons of the brain may not be a vessel for the higher revelation of divinity. And we even learned that even if my brain is a vessel, as long as there's one place in the world or one person in the world which doesn't experience what I'm experiencing, so even what I experience of inspiration, that is limited. It's not really the essence yet. So that opens our heart up to be a vessel to higher levels. And then we learned, well, what are we thinking of? What are we thinking about? What do we think about? What are we going to study? And we learned about the idea of learning every part of the creation. And after we learn in detail in the parts, we start thinking more and more holistically, even though holistic thinking does not make impact. However, it's very important to go start to think holistically, the entire creation, the bigger picture, after we've done the parts. And then it's important to connect the bottom chain of creation all the way to the top, and then every part of that chain, every part all the way back to the original source. And then we connect every part of the physical world. So if whatever you're thinking about the plastic bottle that you have in front of you, you can go from step to step all the way up, and connect it to the essence of God. And then after doing all of that, we have to recognize that we don't really have a divine experience till we actually say a trigger. We use a trigger, a super summary in the holy words of the prayer, like the holy words of King David, or any of the words of prayer. And when we connect everything that we've studied to the specific appropriate words in prayer, in other words, we're not making anything up. We follow the protocol and we connect it to those few words in prayer. What might happen at that time, when we focus on it, we're going to get a sudden new insight. And that is actually an experience of divinity. And then with that experience of divinity, what we're going to do next is then we're going to think, okay, Tavuna, how can we work? What actions can I take that are down to earth and ordinary, but they're really special, that I can connect this inspiration to something physical, some physical, ordinary physical action, like doing a special act of goodness and kindness for other people, that's going to anchor that energy into some good deed, some practical good deed in the world. So I hope that summarizes. I'm not going through the Seder Shtashlos because I think that that's something it's important you do on your own. You can replay this video, and you can order the book from Rabbi Benjamin Walters and read it on your own. So that's a summary.
Beautiful, Rabbi Chirik. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for explaining that so clearly. I know you need to go, so we'll end now.
Yes.
Your portion, and I'll continue with a little bit of the Parsha and the times Yud Beis Yud Gimel Tammuz. I'll stop this recording and then restart it.